Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Educated Social Podcast. Today, I have a really exciting interview for you because I interviewed Carson, also known as Glutenbird Bible, here on Substack, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. She has made an absolute splash with her content all about early modern literature. She finished her PhD recently, and her dissertation title, I just have to read it out because it's such a fantastic title, is Sinister Hospitality: Representations of Dysfunction and the Decay of Hospitality in Early Modern English Drama. She has made content all about her journey, both as a PhD student, becoming a PhD candidate. She actually started her journey on TikTok with documenting preparing for comprehensive exams. We followed through as she defended her dissertation and is now working as a full-time content creator focused on bringing literature to life and sharing readings on Paradise Lost and in early modern literature as well as Gothic literature on social media and on Substack. She has monetized her content and is now completely working as a full-time creator. And so I just think that she's such a great example, not only of how graduate students and current students can kind of document their journey and bring people into their ecosphere, their kind of online community, and then how it is that you would monetize that and build a bit of an online presence beyond your studies. I absolutely love her content. Not only is it greatly informative, but I would also say it's just fun and accessible. So I can't wait for you to hear a little bit more about Carson's journey and to dive into today's episode. I hope that you enjoy. Hello, Carson. It's good to see you again.
Hello, nice to see you too.
So for those of you that don't know, Carson and I have actually met in person a few times when you've come to visit London. It's been about a year since the last time we actually got to meet up, but I think the first time we actually met was I think it was on TikTok, if I'm not mistaken.
That's the first time that's where I got started on social media. So that's where I first saw other people doing academia style content. Yeah.
Okay, so what was the inspiration to get started?
Loneliness, kind of.
Valid.
It was like 4 years ago or possibly 5 now. And I had just started my preparation for the qualifying exams for my PhD, which in my program for literature meant that I had to read through a list of like 110 different texts and sit for a 2-hour-long oral exam. And so the entirety of my work for like 6 months or so had just been reading and taking notes. And I was working from home, self-directed, and I had just moved and it was all online. And I was just going a little bit stir crazy, doing all of this reading and wanting to talk to it. And there's only so many times you can talk to your friends about pamphlets from the 17th century before they ask you to talk about something else with their eyes, if not their words. And so I just started making some videos on TikTok about the things that I was reading, and it snowballed into people being curious about generally what the work was like. And I just started talking more and more and joined more platforms, and it's been a very happy domino effect.
Okay, so you've kind of gone through documenting the PhD experience from comprehensive exams to writing the dissertation, which, by the way, you have the most methodical way of writing a dissertation that I've ever seen.
I do.
Yes, I feel like I'm going through this process and it feels absolutely chaotic. But for those that weren't watching Carson's content, I was like such a fan, so I was paying attention to every video. Like, you had this entire draft that I remember you printing it out and working through the edits and revising it, and I was like, man, one, this is like very like enjoyable to watch as a process. And now
less enjoyable to do.
Indeed. But now as I'm doing it, I'm like, man, this is hard. But I'm curious kind of the transition from the content that really centered around your PhD, and you talked a bit more about your thesis on hospitality. And if you'd like to share more about your thesis, then love to hear about it. But what was that kind of transition between the more centered content on the PhD versus getting more into the general study of early modern literature and sharing that online?
I was worried about the transition because at that point I had been exclusively, documenting what a workday was like and talking about like the experience of being a PhD student. And I wasn't sure whether people were kind of just invested to get that insight into the academic world. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to continue doing social media content in a way that was like interesting and productive for me and also resonated with other people once I stopped doing that. But it actually ended up being a really exciting transition because I think that while I was still in the PhD phase, I was a little bit insecure about speaking about my subject matter, which I shouldn't have been. But I think I once I had those letters after my name, I felt a little more comfortable speaking, not exactly as an authority, but speaking, claiming that I knew things, which was silly because nothing changed once I passed my defense, except that I had a title that I didn't before. But it was really after I completed the PhD that I started sharing more about the literature itself and the time period that I had been studying for so long. And rather than losing the attention of an audience, I got a much larger audience because people like hearing you talk about stories and people like getting insights into niche subjects. People don't like insights,
Yeah.
insights though, into these niche subject matters. And so I started doing more like kind of divulgation of like the subject matter and all that stuff and like retelling of stories and translating some of this denser stuff, hopefully into a less dense way. And that's what I'm mostly doing now. And it's very satisfying for me. And it seems to be resonating with even more people than before.
And I talk a lot about that sense of, I guess, imposter syndrome, or that like sense of credibility that we believe the PhD holds, and that it somehow unlocks the ability to be able to discuss these things with some degree of authority. And so I guess my question is, what would you say is your relationship to academia now? You finish your PhD, you've defended, you've got those letters after your name. How do you like identify yourself in relation to that sense
I'm
of identity?
outside of academia with no plans on going back, which was kind of always my plan. Like when I started my master's degree, I always took the approach of grad school is a job that I'm going to have for a certain amount of time and then on to the next thing. And I was open to the idea that I was going to love it and want to follow a traditional academic career. But it didn't take long for me to realize that that wasn't actually what I wanted to do and that I cared about the research that I was doing. And I like, writing. I like this specific period of history and literature. But the grad school was a thing that I wanted to do for those amount of years. And I wasn't sure at first what I was going to do afterwards. But now it's become social media work. And I'm very happy about that and have not really any interest in returning to a formal academic environment.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the kind of transition or like the evolution of your content. And you started on TikTok. That's how we became familiar with one another's work. But yeah, tell us about like the kind of overall progression of your content.
It started with those short videos on TikTok, mostly doing like sharing what a workday for me looked like for the most part, and a little bit, people ask questions, I answer them, but largely just giving some insights into people outside of academia or earlier on in academia than I was about what the whole thing was like. And,
Hmm.
as like the solidarity of finding other people at the same stage as you
Yeah.
and sharing the experiences and all of that. And after probably like 2 years of doing that in a casual way, I started to think about taking it more seriously. And that for me meant creating a presence on other platforms. Instagram, I'm there, just kind of hanging out, chatting, showing pictures of the books I'm reading and whatever else. But starting Substack and YouTube was where I realized that I could actually transition this into something more professional through longer form content. And from a practical standpoint, from content that can be monetized beyond the
Yeah.
TikTok Creator Fund. And so with YouTube starting to make at first longer videos of the same content as TikTok, just saying, here's what a day looks like, but in a 20-minute insight rather than a 2-minute documentation. And Substack being able to really discuss in writing, which is always easier to be deliberate and in depth than speaking, at least for me. Those were ways that I was able to start, branching out beyond the day in my life style thing, which I do still like, and more into the like in-depth discussion of literature.
And where do your ideas come from?
Gosh. I feel like I should have an answer to that, and for some reason that's the one that stumped me. I largely, yeah, no, you go.
Well, sometimes they just come out of nowhere, and I think this is what's quite interesting about being a creator is people say like, oh, like how do you, for like basically like kind of like force the creative muscle to like produce an idea. It's like I'll just be out getting a coffee and I'll suddenly have an idea about why we're so obsessed with. I have a video idea at the moment that I keep percolating on, so it's front of mind. But I have this video idea about like why the West is so obsessed with matcha. And I really want to do like a history of colonization and like talk about like how we became obsessed with tea and like the idea of extraction and over consumption of a product, of a foreign product. And I mean, I was just out for a matcha with a friend and I was just like, man, we're all so obsessed with, and I love it, but like I'm so curious to explore this idea from like a history perspective. And that's just
Please
like
make that video.
It's like a random,
I want to watch that video.
I'm working on it. It's like the thing that's at the front of my mind all day today.
I mean, yeah, like the thing I'm doing right now on Substack is a Paradise Lost slow read book club, and that was a shower thought that I was just like, this is embarrassing to admit, but I've been trying to wean myself off of like constant music, constant podcasts. I feel like I'm just like always feeding stuff in, like I'll bring a speaker into the shower and just like listen to music or something, and I was like, I need to stop doing that. I'm filling my brain with other people's thoughts. And the moment that I did that, I was just like washing my hair and I was like, there's 12 books of Paradise Lost in 12 months in the year. And I started thinking about like this Substack reading project that I could do. And now that is basically my full-time job that I'm going to be doing for 2026 is that book club. And so, yeah, sometimes it is just totally random, spur of the moment things. I am currently still able to milk my dissertation for content because I talked about so many literary texts in that my bibliography is basically a to-do list of YouTube videos that I can make of like, well, I could talk about that play next and could talk about this concept. And so that's probably going to keep me going for a while, honestly. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And how would you describe your content to somebody? Like if you're at a dinner party and you're talking about your YouTube channel, you're talking about the content you produce, how do you describe it to people?
I normally just would start with, I make videos about books, which is broad, obviously, and there's a lot of different things that looks like. And of course, now I also do Substack written content in addition to the video stuff. But yeah, that I talk about old books online, and then obviously the discussion evolves organically from there, and I can talk about my like the specific books that I do and also just the way that I try to talk about literature, which is to take unfamiliar texts and ideas or texts and ideas that people have like name recognition on but maybe not a lot of closer familiarity, and I try to kind of unpack them and share them in a way that can interest people just at the level of I want to listen to somebody talk for 30 minutes about Macbeth, or can give people then things that they can pursue on their own, questions or names or texts or anything like that, that if they want to take a spark of curiosity and pursue it further, that they can do it that way. That's what I think of myself as doing. I don't know what's going on when people actually watch the 30-minute video on Macbeth. It was 50 minutes long. It wasn't 30 minutes, but I have a lot to say about Macbeth. But that's what I think of as doing. And so I'll try to like use an example from that, like that when I explain to people what it is I'm doing.
I think the It reminded me of the personal curriculum trend. I think the personal curriculum trend is like perfectly positioned for us as as
Yes.
former academics or current academics that are making content online. Uh, yeah, I'm just like curious how it is that you've seen that trend evolve, and how it is that you've kind of applied it um in this reading, the slow reading of Paradise Lost. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, like your I guess your take on the trend. It's kind of an open question.
I think that there's a lot of things about studiousness that people yearn for. I don't want to say academia because I think that academia itself is something that a lot of people feel alienated by.
Yeah.
But people love things like sitting in a library with your friends. People love taking notes on something and finding one area of curiosity and sustaining it. And I think that a lot of times it's hard to find avenues for that
Mhm.
outside of being a student. And for a lot of people, being a student ends when you're 21. And then if you feel that impulse sometimes when it's September and you're watching Gilmore Girls and you're seeing people walk to campus, you feel, oh, I wish I were doing that, but you don't know how to get back some of that
Mm.
sense of curiosity and coziness and all of that. And so I think that, yeah, the idea of the personal curriculum, which I can't remember the name of the creator. Oh, I do remember it. Parmesan Princess, I think it's her name on TikTok, is the one who started the whole trend. In the first place by sharing what she does. And yeah, I think that it's so fun when an idea like that catches on
Mhm.
and snowballs because that it speaks to someone, and that's so cool. And I love
You
also that
just
it came from somebody who's not a professor or a grad student or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
I also like that it's been used in order to, like, it's not just about having a reading list or having like a like what we would deem like a syllabus. It's also like having a personal curriculum for a hobby or a skill that you're wanting to learn, and like how it's been adopted in a variety of ways. I really appreciate how it's gotten people to think of how it is that they could structure their learning in such a way that's exciting and enticing to them, and they can make some content out of it perhaps, or they can keep it
Yeah.
between friends. Yeah, and I just think that I saw that you had done a fall curriculum.
Yeah, a
And
gothic
did you
lit.
yeah, and I know that I watched the video when you first shared it, but I didn't notice any particular updates, but that's also because maybe the content didn't land on my algorithm.
Yeah. I've made a couple more YouTube videos about like specific texts that I read along the way. I did succeed in this is my thing that's occupying my mind that I need to make a video about that I was supposed to make one at the end of December about, and it's not the end of December anymore, but it's okay. I don't have advisors who will be mad at me for missing deadlines anymore.
There's no strict timelines here.
Exactly. I did end up more or less completing my goal of reading Gothic literature for 4 months, which was really fun. I did the thing that I was basically anticipating that I would, which is that for the first month of my planned 4 month curriculum, I was really into it and really motivated. And I read a ton and I did research and I took notes and all that stuff. And then it dwindled a little bit gradually, but I did read every month for 4 months. I think I ended up reading think 12 books or something like that.
That's
And
crazy.
it was some of them I had read before. Like I had
Okay.
read, I reread Frankenstein, and I put Jane Eyre on the list of completed, even though I didn't read the full thing, but I spent a lot of time like sitting down and flipping back through it. But yeah, I read books that I had never read before, that now I'm so into, and I like set research questions for myself, and one of them was about hospitality in the Gothic, because Gothic novels are all about spooky houses and the women who are trapped in them. And this was something that like every now and then while I was still dissertating, people would be like, oh, have you ever applied these concepts of sinister hospitality, dysfunctional hospitality to the Gothic? And I always had to say like, no, I have no space in my brain. But now I do have space in my brain. And it was really, yeah, it was fun for me as a theme to be making some videos about. You asked earlier how I get ideas. Sometimes I get ideas from seeing what other people online are doing and seeing if I can adapt that on my own without copying it, obviously. And that was definitely a point where I was inspired to be like, oh, I could do this. I could do some stuff along these lines. And it was also really satisfying for me to take some of that, use some of those academic muscles that I hadn't in a little while
Yeah.
in the year plus since I finished my PhD. Yeah, it's a great trend. It's great.
Yeah. I also find what's so interesting about the, like, I guess being online because you have to come up with fresh ideas, and especially Substack. I'm finding this with writing more about history on Substack. It kind of forces you to get out of the very narrow frame of your dissertation topic. And I think it's just such an important muscle that a lot of senior academics don't exercise because that's not the profession. The profession requires depth and really knowing your source material and really knowing your time period and your subfield and all of those things. I don't know. I like that the personal curriculum trend kind of brought us back to undergrad and the ability to explore all these different topics and apply, the concepts that we find interesting to a variety of things, like, applying hospitality to the Gothic.
Yeah, and having to, like you're saying, not exactly going back to square one, but approaching things from a point of curiosity rather than trying to read something thinking about how it's going to bolster you as an authority on something,
Yes.
going back to, I need to learn about this, not I'm researching in order to fuel this paper that I'm writing, or whatever the case may be.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, what does your process look like when you're producing content? Like, from the point that you have that shower idea to the point where the piece of content, whether that's on Substack or YouTube, makes it in front of your audience. What is your process?
I for YouTube takes the most work for me, and I'm trying to get better at being an extemporaneous speaker, but when I'm not in conversation, I'm not very good at stringing together a sentence and keeping myself on topic. Possibly I'm not that good at it in conversation either. But I have to basically fully script all of my YouTube videos. So right now I'm working on a video about the mad woman in the attic archetype
Mm-hmm.
in Gothic novels. And it's somewhere between an outline and a script what I write. I'm not actually like
Mm-hmm.
reading off a prompter or a page or anything like that, but I do have to basically write out sentence by sentence the things that I want to say, and that outline/script is like 30 pages right now.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So it's a writing process. It's a lot of sitting down and making it's kind of similar to writing a paper in some ways, of making an outline about first this topic, then that topic, and then fleshing out one section at a time. And for all of my videos, I end up doing research, which sometimes is just going back into my archive of files or going back into a book that I've read a million times and just reminding myself of quotes or, things in it that I want to talk about. But sometimes it is downloading academic articles and
Mm-hmm.
pulling books off the shelf that I haven't read in years and reading an academic chapter or reading a play for the first time. And so it's very reading and writing based. And then there's the endless learning process for me of making good video content, because it involves so much technology and I'm not a tech person. And so God, the amount of time it took me to edit my first video on YouTube using Final Cut, I wanted to like throw my computer out the window. And there ended up being a full 5 minutes of just black, dead nothingness at the end of the video that I didn't realize was
No.
there until somebody pointed it out to me. I was like, I don't know how that happened. It might
Whoops.
still be up there. Yeah.
I had a question. So this is like a random tangent, but you're talking about Gothic literature. I am not a literary scholar in any way, shape, or form. And I'm currently reading Wuthering Heights.
Saw
Um,
that. I'm so jealous of you that as an adult you can read that for the first time. That's amazing. What a gift.
it's it's wild. I also feel far less intelligent
No.
reading it
Is
now.
the
It's taking,
language?
well, I think it's quite dense prose, and also because I'm reading it and I'm trying to pay attention to certain things that I probably wouldn't had I read this as if I were younger. Um, yeah, there's like little things like I notice a lot of like phallic language that's used in the first like
Ooh,
40 pages, and I'm like, what's up with that? And and I'm writing like little like for example, Heathcliff is referred to as it for about 2 pages when he as a child is first introduced. I'm like, okay, that's significant. And so then my academic brain is kind of like working in overload as I'm, annotating this book
yes.
the first time I'm reading it. And I'm really curious, you make these analysis videos, and this is just kind of like a selfish recommendation. Like I would love I would love if there was a video on your channel about like how to actually perform a deep reading if you're trying to get into classic literature for the first time. Like here are a couple that like this is like stage 1 is just like look out for these things. Stage 2 is like here's another way of reading it. I just an idea just to put in
Yeah,
your
I've
brain.
I've talked about that like ever so slightly. I made one like academic advice for English majors video a while ago, and like buried into it, there's like 2 minutes of me saying like, first, like I don't even remember what I said. I had good words for it. This is
Well,
what I'm talking about. I need
I'm
my
gonna go
outlet.
watch that now.
It's like first, oh, this is how I separated it. Like a reactive read and a reflective read of like
Okay.
reactive notes and then reflective notes, which is exactly what you're saying of like, okay, first note these things and then, do a little bit more depth. But yeah, I mean, it really is, it's the repetition, the things that flag your interest because you keep noticing them pop up. Those are always the signposts to follow with literature of just like this word keeps being used, or that's how my whole dissertation got started. Was that I was just I started my master's degree with a research interest in food studies, which
Mm-hmm.
was largely just because I had previously been working as a baker and I loved it, and I was a little bit resentful towards myself for taking myself out of a world where I was surrounded by freshly baked croissants all the time. And I was like, well, I'll just study food in literature. And then that led me to, focusing on scenes in literature where there's food. And when there's food, it's often during shared meals. And I was just noticing over and over again, like, oh my God, these dinner parties keep on ending really badly in these
Mm-hmm.
plays. What is up with that? And just following that, curious point of repetition led me to this whole field of hospitality studies that just came out of me being like, it's not good to get invited to dinner in the 17th century. What's that about?
You just sparked a memory of when you were working on your dissertation. Some of my favorite videos you made were when you would share the food that you were making throughout the day. Those are my favorite videos.
I'm actually working on a YouTube video right now that's like, I feel like I have been thinking like, oh my God, it's like when I first got started with like, a work week vlog, but like framed around like what I'm eating. Like yesterday I spent 4 or 5 hours meal prepping and like kind of talking a little bit about what I was making, and now I'm going to be documenting what I'm eating for the whole week.
Okay, I can't wait.
Which hopefully
I can't wait to watch
is a
that.
lot of beans. Okay,
I can't wait to watch that.
now I need to actually follow through and do the vlog. And will
I
do
can't
it.
wait to watch it. I'm
Amazing.
okay. So one of your most popular videos was, I think it was like cannibalism in early modern literature. Okay, first and foremost, I'm very curious. I mean, I'm sure this is kind of an offshoot of the dissertation, but I'm curious, one, where the idea came from, two, how the reception to it was, and also, I guess, like, yeah, no, I have another question off the back of that, but we'll start there.
The reception like on social media
Yeah.
to yeah so yeah, cannibalism was, I don't think it ended up being an entire chapter of my dissertation, but it was a substantial part of it because yeah, like when I give that, to go back to the you're at a dinner party, how do you explain what you're doing, when I was in the dissertation phase of work, if I was talking to somebody and they asked what my dissertation was about, I would say very bad dinner parties in 17th century plays. And one of the ways that dinner parties can be bad is when there's cannibalism happening. You would be surprised at how often there's cannibalism taking place. And so that became something that I really had to dig into about what it meant in the time period and in actual life, and then what it meant in literature as well. I mean, I don't know if because you do early modern history around
Yeah, so
race.
yeah, there's a
Does
lot of
cannibalism come
reference.
up?
Yeah, a lot in the travel records, especially when travel records in West Africa and in North America, it is mentioned a lot, which I find ironic, especially when I think about what happened at Jamestown.
Yeah. So it gets mentioned from the perspective of European people afraid that the African people are going to eat them, or
To an extent, it's also it's used a lot in the way that they are describing non-European people as barbaric, that they practice cannibalism, and this is also usually in reference to some sort of, I guess, like religious judgment. Um,
totally.
but that's usually when it's mentioned, is less so about the fear as much as it is the judgment of
An
a group of
othering
people.
tactic. They
Yes,
are,
precisely.
scare quotes, savage because they eat people. It's interesting. I have a chapter in my dissertation about hospitality and racial and national difference,
Hmm.
which it engages a little bit with that. And in some of the the focus of my research ended at 1642. Civil
Yep.
War happens,
Yep.
theaters close, but some of my reading inevitably brings me later than that. Once you get to like the 1700s, there start to be narratives from formerly enslaved people,
Yes.
none of the authors of whom I can remember the names of right now, but in a couple of those, there are descriptions from the formerly enslaved person describing a fear that they were going to be eaten by their European captors. And so there is this, like, it's different on each side. Obviously, from the European perspective, it's an othering tactic and a dehumanizing tactic, and
Hmm.
from the enslaved perspective, it's a very real concern about.
Their
I mean,
safety.
their lives were consumed. Their resources were consumed. Their cultures were
Yeah.
consumed. Sometimes their bodies were consumed as well. And so it's interesting that it's reflective, mutually reflexive. Maybe is the word, or maybe it's not. But that is one of the things that I talked about in that video you're referencing, the YouTube video, which I think has like 300,000 views,
Yeah.
which is crazy for me. I don't normally get those kinds of views on YouTube. I've got a couple of TikTok videos that popped off because I was pouring myself a glass of whiskey, and people like that.
Well, I remember the whiskey barrel.
The bookshelf bourbon,
Yeah.
which I haven't shared, but I had to clear it out because I think there might have been sediment in it. So hopefully I wasn't
No.
poisoning myself. But well. Anyway, but so the response to that was large, and I think that cannibalism is one of those things that people are very fascinated by because it's weird and it's dark and it's filled with metaphorical significance. And so I think that part of, to be like practical about it or realistic, part of the reason that video did so well is that you see the word cannibalism and you're like, ooh, what?
What's going on here?
More people click on it. And it's a 30-minute video, and I think I talk about like 12 different literary texts in it. And I think that that's also a thing that people respond well to, is that they're interested in a bibliography, kind of like a trend across many texts. And because I was taking a eye-catching idea and talking about it in plain terms, but with a depth of citations, essentially.
Yeah.
I think that, people just, it gives you a lot of food for thought, if you will. And I already knew that people were interested in cannibalism stuff because often when I talked about it on TikTok, that was also something that would resonate with a larger audience than most of my videos. But yeah, I don't know. We're all weird. People are all weird, and they like to dig into weird concepts.
Okay, so in terms of strategy, do you deliberately like test a theory in short form and then write about it in long form or create content around it? Or is there Like, is there any method to the madness, I suppose,
That's such a
is
good
the
idea. I
question.
should do that. That's a great idea. No, I'm extremely disorganized. I love to make plans and I hate to follow through on them. So I will make, content calendars for myself and, I'm gonna make X amount of short form videos and then I'm gonna work on all these long form videos and all of that. And then that doesn't end up happening necessarily. The extent of my strategy is probably that sometimes if I have already a YouTube video that I've posted or a Substack article that I either have posted or am planning to post, I will sometimes do short form tie-ins to that. Instagram Reels often perform better for me than TikTok. So I'm not super active on Instagram, but I will sometimes try to use it to kind of remind people that my content exists in a better way or a more in-depth way in other places.
Hmm.
And that's about it for strategy.
That's totally
I'm
fair.
not very strategic.
That's okay. I mean, I
I
think
think
that
like, you're such a business person, you're so good at like plans and all of that. It seems like a method and all of that. And I could probably use some of that. And I currently don't.
you've done very well without it. And I also think that it's important for people to see that you don't have to have a perfect plan. Like, it can just be an idea that sparks and, you get online and make the content. And if anything, what I want for the podcast is for people to see that there's a million different ways to do the thing.
I
You
was a
don't have
little
to do
worried
it.
actually when I started this Substack project that I'm doing now, because for the first time I have opened a paid subscription tier, and that
Hmm.
means accountability. Because previously it's like, yeah, whatever, if I lose interest in a project, I said I was going to make 10 videos about this and I only make 5, it doesn't really matter. But now I am, I've created a agreement between myself and the people who have signed up for this, and now I'm going to be doing it consistently, which I was
Hmm.
scared about at first. But I think it's actually probably a good thing to enforce a little bit of structure and
Hmm.
regularity into my content.
I always say the beginning of strategy is a series, something that you just, you don't have to actually you don't have to use the creative muscle of your brain every time you have to post a piece of content. It's, if you can create like a bit of a theme that you follow at regularity, then that's enough structure to kind of develop the muscle. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it
that makes
seems it seems
sense.
like
Yeah.
that's what you've done. And speaking of, like the paid Substack tier and all of that, how do you make money? How are you monetizing content? What work pays the bills?
Substack and YouTube. I'm not very active on TikTok anymore. Even when one time I made $1,000 on TikTok because I refilled my bookshelf bourbon barrel and 2 million people watched. And then I took myself out to dinner on it. More than
Amazing.
just dinner. I didn't spend $1,000 on dinner, but no, it's YouTube just through ads, and Substack now through the paid subscription is how I am able to earn what is like an actual livable amount of money. I say livable as in like I could have lived off of it. I do. My partner is he was in academia originally, but STEM, and left academia and made enough money to become like the primary earner for our
Mhm.
household. And so when I say make a living, it's a very different conversation than it would have been for me 5 years ago before he
Yeah.
made that move. But it's Substack and YouTube. I don't do any I don't even
Paid
know the
ads.
words for it. That's the one. Yeah. Sponsorships, anything like that. Mostly, again, just because I'm pretty unstructured. And so I'm wary to enter into any kind of ad agreement. And I'm also just generally a little bit wary about partnering with companies. I don't feel very adept at figuring out what a company that would align with my like
Mm.
perspectives and values would be, especially now. I mean, you must get a lot of this. Like all of my
AI.
emails are
It's all AI.
AI, study
It's
AI,
horrible.
this and that. And then also all the random things that's like athletics companies. And I'm like, who are you talking to?
I'm getting harassed by like a food like a pet supplements company.
I'm getting
I
emails
keep
from Timu.
Yeah. It's
Get out of
like,
here.
why do you think that this would align? I don't understand what in my content prompted this email. So yeah, I'm same boat.
Yeah. But yeah, the AI stuff is really drowning out and I personally don't want to partner with an AI
Oh,
forward brand. Also, practically, I know that nothing would tank my credibility further
with your
with
audience.
my audience than shilling for an AI study company. So yeah, those emails get deleted. I should probably respond to them, but I don't. Sorry.
No, I've gotten to the point where it's like 10 a day sometimes, and I'm like, no.
Just no.
Just no. Okay, so how do you see, I know like it's a bit of a, you may not have the answer, but I guess like where do you see the future of your content? What would be like a goal that you're working towards or something that you would like to achieve off the back of your content as, as a public intellectual?
I would really like to. A lot of it is just staying the same, but with more frequency and reaching more people. I feel like between YouTube and Substack, being able to do that kind of long form content, I
Mm-hmm.
have landed on a like mode of talking about literature that feels very satisfying for me and also like creatively and intellectually fulfilling. So that is ideal. So I would like to keep on doing that, talk about more literature. I would like to expand a bit into more of kind of like you were saying, like the advice element. I
Yeah.
think that I get in my own way sometimes of assuming that everyone knows what I know, like thinking like, oh, it's just like whatever. You write an essay, you write an essay. And I need to shake myself out of that and get back to, how grateful I would have been when I was a 24-year-old going back to grad school and it felt like everyone in the room knew what they were doing and I
Mm.
had no idea what I was doing. That like, sometimes even if it's nothing groundbreaking, I think sometimes just hearing somebody describe a process is very helpful and reassuring. And so I haven't been making any like academic advice or writing strategy style videos since I finished writing my dissertation. So I would like to expand and kind of go back to that. And then with Substack, I feel like there's so much potential for this book club style, like more collective, rather
Yeah.
than just me putting out a video about one book and people responding just in the comments of that video saying like, oh, I too have read this book, or oh, I want now to read that book. With Substack, because it is, a serialized newsletter, there's so much opportunity for what feels like a like discussion section. Like I feel like
Yeah.
I'm back in a classroom or back. It's like a better version of teaching. I had to teach a lot on Zoom, as did many of
Mm-hmm.
us during the
Yep.
pandemic. And my like, I feel my whole body clenching when I think about like, the moments just like either standing physically in front of a room of students or sitting in a Zoom meeting with, 30 different blacked out screens, which, obviously I didn't require them to put their cameras on, so they're blacked out for whatever reason they want, but just like sitting there and just like begging somebody to say something because I was trying to lead a discussion and people were, maybe some of them hadn't done the reading, maybe some of them were super shy, maybe some of them just didn't feel like what they had to say was worth saying. And that really soured my thoughts on like those kinds of discussions for a while
Mm-hmm.
because it was very painful for me and for the students. None of us were having a very productive time in those moments. And this is like you know, a a version of that is like everyone's having actually a good time. It's like the
Yeah.
positive inverse of people are there because they want to be, and people, I pose discussion questions and people answer them. And I'm like, my heart is healing. And so my mental image of it right now is like me running across a hill, like skipping while happy music plays. That is what it feels like when people answer my discussion questions on Substack.
That's why I try to encourage so many academic. I'm like, you got to get online. There's an intellectually curious community
They
here,
want to
like
talk to you.
waiting, dying to have a conversation about this stuff.
Yeah,
And you'd find it so much more, like, I guess, impactful if you just gave it a shot.
it's amazing. It's great. Yeah, it's great. So yeah, more of that, more depth, more discussion, more reminding myself that I do have some skills and knowledge that other people might be interested in hearing from. Again, it's the imposter syndrome thing. It's so hard to shake of like nobody needs to know what I have to say about this, but just putting it out there, and some people will.
If you taught a class on early modern literature, I'd sign up.
My dream, early modern English hostesses, that is the thing that oh my God, while I was writing, this is a digression, but while I was writing my dissertation, about once every 4 months, I would be sitting at my desk and I would say, I'm going to change my subject. I'm going to make it all about women. And my advisor or my partner or my friend or whoever it is would have to be like, Carson, stop it. You've already written 50% of it. Don't change it.
Yeah.
Change it.
No, I have the same urge like every 5 seconds, so I understand.
Yeah. So that would be, that really in terms of like what's next, 2027 maybe on Substack or earlier, who knows? That is the thing that I would really love to do, is just talk about women on the page and the stage in early modern English
I love
history.
That. Okay, well, trademark that. You heard it here first.
Dibs,
Carson's going to teach a class.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will be the first to sign up.
Great.
And I'm also sure that many people in Accepted Society would absolutely love to attend. So, keep me posted whenever you're ready to do that.
Gonna have to do it.
All right. Well, I think that is a perfect place to go ahead and wrap up the conversation. Thank you so much, Carson. Where can people find you?
People can find me on just about every social media platform as Glutenberg Bible, which it's one word and it's like Gutenberg Bible, but with an L for gluten. And that's where I am. I'm on YouTube and Substack primarily, and Instagram in the background, and TikTok every now and then. That's where I am.
Fantastic. Well, it is an absolutely iconic handle, and all of you should go check out Carson's content. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye, friends.
Thank you so much for having me.